Traniers, Chastain, Gales, and Bushes, and Woods, and Petites, and you name them all. They all have left their part in history and Mobile Fire Department. All of them have left a piece of their life, in this history as we go down it in the history of Creole Fire Station number 1.
In 1819, over 200 years ago, the Creole No. 1 Fire Department was established. As the very first providers of fire protection in the city of Mobile, this company began as a volunteer fire company. Over the years, Creole No. 1 has become a family tradition, where multiple generations of past and current members of Mobile Fire Department can trace their roots. In 1888, the decision was made by city officials to create a paid fire department, and Creole No. 1 was accepted as a member of this paid department. Although considered members of Mobile Fire Department, this company was segregated from Mobile Fire until 1970, when integration took place. The Fire Station No. 1 building was constructed in 1869 and remains standing today as a monument to the very first firefighters who volunteered to provide fire protection for the city of Mobile. In 2008, the African American Heritage Trail recognized Creole No. 1 with a historic marker at the Creole No. 1 building on North Dearborn Street in downtown Mobile. Today we would like to recognize the last crew of Creole No. 1 prior to integration. Clovis Reed, Cecil Bush, Vernon Chastain, Claude Dublé, Tony Gales, Raymond Hindenburg, Edward Otis, Jerome Tranier, Paul Tranier, Harold Woods, Michael Chastain, Vincent Collins, Eugene Fisher, Henry Hafler, Willie Jones, Leon Petit, Gavan Tranier, Mark J. Tranier, Alfred Watson, Willie Wright,
Alex Tranier, Deputy Chief, 33 years of service.
Mark Tranier, Fire Marshal, died April 2007. Raymond Henningsburg, retired fire captain, 36 and a half years. Retired April 7th, 2000. Floyd Dublade, retired captain, January 11th, 1987. 31 years service.
Michael Chastain, 30 years service, retired January 1995.
Edward Otis, retired 30 years, April the 8th, 1960.
Cecil Bush retired 29 years, 4 months.
Oh, I thought they had retirement.
20.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2006. I mean,
2000.
2000. What did I say?
He retired April of 2000.
I retired January the 1st, 1990.
Mr. Bush, 1990.
Right.
Captain Otis, April of
8, 2000.
2000.
Andrew Otis. Andrew Otis, current driver in Engine 9, 26 years of service.
Michael Chastain Jr., captain, 19 years.
Thank you.
I don't know an exact number, and it has not been continuous. However, we can actually, and just pretty much about anyone at this table, can trace their roots back to 1819, which was the establishment of the organization. It's cousins, my father, going on and on. It's been quite a few actually.
Captain Hindenburg.
3 generations.
3 generations.
Yeah. I had 2 uncles who was gone before I came on.
Prior to you.
I'm the only one.
The only one. No one after, no one before.
With me, my grandfather was on the department off and on during the war. They had what they called supernumerary. Yeah. Well, he was calling on that. And my daddy worked with their daddy for years, and him for years. And I had an uncle that was on here for, well, he retired. He was on here for some years, sometime. And then now we got it in his hands. So we'll see where this is going.
Otis family.
Well, the generation with myself, my nephew, and I had a brother on. 3 of them.
Only one. I'm the only one.
No one prior, no one since.
And I always around fire stations. I used to love to see the fire trucks come out the door. I used to go down on Broad Street, which is number 11 fire station. I used to go down there, and when I get down that way, I walk real slow. I'd be going to the store to get bread for my mother. And I used to love to see the old fire truck come out of the door. And it was in the blood.
Let me tell you, when I came on, I took the test. I was working at the Battle House. The Chamber of Commerce building was across the street. And I wanted to be a fireman. So I took the test. And I must have came out number 1 because when I was interviewed by George Pierce, he asked me if I was a Creole. And I told him yes. And he said, well, you're going to have to get a letter of recommendation from either of the 2 captains, which was Tranier and Fisher, at number 1. You can get one from the president of the Creole Benevolence Association, which he ran a funeral home. I went to each one, and they said, we're not giving out any letters. This is, so I went to Captain Fisher, and he finally agreed. He told me when I got off from work at the Battle House to come by Ann Street window. And I went there, he gave me a piece of paper, said, "This is certified as C.P. Bush is a Creole, signed E.J. Fisher." I took that letter to George Pierce at Personnel Board, and that's the way I got on.
I remember my father, for years, tried over 6 years to get in the fire department. And remember, back then, if you wasn't identified as 80% or 85% Creole, they didn't hire you. They didn't hire my father for 6 years, not knowing the history of my father with Henry Reed, until he actually just came home. I don't know who told him. He just left out there one day with a big envelope with documentation. And when he came back, the next day he was hired. And he just went out there and said, you know, y'all don't, apparently don't want to realize this man has more Creole in his blood than any of y'all. And if because of my dad's complexion, like mine, he just was not bright complexion. But until you research the bloodline, then you find out, you know, you just as much Creole as anyone else.
I was the last one to come on Creole number 1. I was the last one. I should have came on at 64, but I was at summer camp with Captain Tranier, Deputy Chief Tranier's father. And when I went to put in for it, it was closed. And I was a merchant seaman, so I left the country. And I came back. That was 64. And I actually didn't get on to 1970.
It was the closeness that we had. I wanted to complete it because I wanted the retirement, and I never felt intimidated. You know, I was comfortable with being a fireman. And like I said, I was on 30 years and retired. During that time, it wasn't with Creoles. It was integrated around 1971 or 2. And I went to 14. By having experience at number 1, I got along good with the guys over there.
I would give that credit to my brother. I can tell you without a doubt, even with all the family history, I had absolutely no intention whatsoever of being a firefighter. My brother made a spill to me. I was in college, in my 3rd year of college, and he made a spill to me that basically, you know, my funds were somewhat short, and he's like, come on the fire department. You know, it'll help pay your way through school. He even laid out a plan where I could attend classes, you know, during the day and continue my education, and that's what I would give that credit to him. And really, after, you know, going through training, I still had no intention of staying. And I would say probably my first 2 weeks at the station, and I was fortunate. I started with a good group of guys. Literally, I was 24 years old at the time. They were all in their early 40s to mid 40s, and they were sort of like my uncles, and really kind of took me under their wing.
One thing, I wanted to stay the paycheck.
That was the main reason. You know, but when I was a little boy, I lived on Congress Street, and I see the fire truck going by, and I always wanted to be a fireman.
I'm on the paycheck now.
Well, I would listen to some of the stories that Dad would tell, and also the teamwork, the way the captain said, we're gonna do this, and everybody just do what they're gonna do, and it's a team effort.
Well,
like that.
the first paycheck I got,
You want to quit?
That might have been that $26.
Deputy Chief father got hold of me and told me, don't do that. I had told you to come on. Don't do that. Stay. It'll get better. And sure enough, about a year and a half, I was at top pay.
Yeah, I took it.
What-
Let me tell you
still
about
what-
it. $10 cut to come on. I came on in July the 1st of '64. Working 2 shifts on it.
Yeah.
And I worked 6 months, and that's when they put the 3rd shift on. When I came on, I was making $328 a month. In July, that's right. October, they gave a raise. I went to $343. And December, when they put the 3rd shift on, I went to $356. And I was still like started there.
Well, my father, right down towards the end, he was sitting #1 on the fire inspector's list, and he was sitting #1 on the district chief list. And they didn't promote anybody for a year. And when he had his heart attack, all of a sudden the chief shows up at the house with paperwork for him to sign to retire. And this was something that they usually didn't do. They would rehabilitate the people, let them come back to work. But they kind of forced him to sign the retirement. And he went out, and as soon as he went out, they started promoting. So that was very interesting. And then when I got promoted to inspector, when I showed up and my dad saw that car, he said, "You finally brought my red car," which he should have earned himself.
I pushed for a while, and then he had his dreams and ideas and hopes, I guess, and then he come around and see things my way and maybe here. and I used to tell him stories about different events and things. And one of the things I told him was, I say, now when you start going to the stations, I said, don't be running your mouth. I said, just sit back and listen and learn. And he'd come to the house and he'd say, well, this happened and that happened. I said, I hope you kept your mouth shut, because you're a rookie. You don't know nothing, but you just think you know everything. And then later on, he got to the point, man, I got to come to the station out of the way. He was talking, you think he'd been on the fire department 30 years and been on for 3 weeks. I said, this.
Well, I guess it really was just in my blood. My uncle was, my mother's brother was a firefighter, fire captain. And he had a brother that was into it, but he was in a wreck and had to retire. But I used to talk to my Uncle Gene all the time about the fire department, you know. And first I thought I was gonna be a brick mason. My father was a brick mason. Then I found out that wasn't what I wanted to do. So my uncle said, why don't you go take the test for the fire department? So I did that. And it was 5 blacks that took the fire department, well, it was 5 Creoles. They hired 2. So I didn't get it the first go around. And about 2 years later, they called me and I was hired on the fire department. And I mean, it's just something I love doing. I enjoyed my 35-year career. I don't have no regrets for us coming on the fire department, you know. It was very satisfactory to me.
I did want to attest to it. One thing he told me was to keep my nose clean and to stay in the red books. And he would always emphasize that whenever, you know, we got a chance to talk. And, you know, it's the best advice he could have gave me. Yeah, that's something that he gave to me that I keep with me today. And I share with the younger guys who are coming on now. That's what I tell them. You know, try to keep your nose clean and you know, study.
No, I actually came home from school one weekend, and one week I think I was out on spring break or something. Me and him was sitting down talking, and he said, "Hey, the fire department is gonna put on a test. Go sign up." So I went, and that's what I did. I went to the personnel board and signed up. A couple weeks later, I had to take the test. Did pretty good. I get a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, you need to come back for an interview." And that's how it started, but it was a good decision. I hate that I didn't do it sooner. I look at the pictures in certain yearbooks that we have of fathers with their sons on the department, and I wish I had done it sooner so me and him could have a picture like that.
I flat out did not want John Michael here. I think that changed with Chief Sealy. I know it changed with Chief Sealy. For me, that was a rebirth in my career. And probably the first time in my career, I saw someone at the top who was truly dedicated to doing things the right way and not going through the targeting process with employees. And I really did not want John Michael here, but that, Mark was wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
I can say Ed Otis, Cecil Bush, Mike Chastain, Claude Dublade. When you look at those guys, I mean, they were fighters, and they got out there and they got the job done. And my dad was a mentor. He really guided us well. He told us one thing. He said, nobody can bother you. He says it's a book, a set of rules and regulations. He said, as long as you follow those, there's nobody there can do anything to you. They can attempt to do it. He said, but when you get over the personnel board and you pull it out on them, they'll end up in trouble.
When I first came on, I was assigned to Captain Tranier. And I would say he was probably my first mentor. He tried to make sure that I could get ready to learn how to drive a fire truck, operate a fire truck. He was one of them, even if he made me just go out there and sit and shift gears in the truck, make sure I could get regular with the shifting pattern. He was one of them,
I had some pretty good relationships with. It kind of troubled me a little bit because I thought they were pretty nice guys and other folks didn't like them. And one of them was my captain at one time. And everybody hated to be on his crew. And we had this one guy that when he got assigned to the company, he took off sick 3 days. And he said, because he hated to come over there. And after he got there, we had a woods fire out by the airport. And his wife, this farmer's wife, had an accident or got sick and had to take her to the hospital. Well, this captain come and got the Jeep and took the man to his house to get his car, because he lived not too far from there, to go to the hospital. And then later on that evening, we got to talking about it, and he said, everybody said how mean he was, but he really a good man. He started crying. And that was just a kind of a little moving moment for me, because here this guy, both of them really supposed to be hard asses pretty much. And for this guy to do what he did for him. And he say, I've never had anybody do anything like that for me. But he did a lot of things like that. And by me being on his company, I knew about him where other people didn't. And, it was kind of like, I'm one person to you, but I'm another person to them. And that's the way he was.
My father's big thing was the rule book. And it's interesting because that's my big thing today. I think if the rule book properly applied puts everyone on equal footing. And it also clearly defines for the employee what's expected of them. And too often we have practice versus actually following the rule book. And I'm big on the book itself because that's what's going to matter when you end up at the personnel board or in the chief's office. And my dad always put a lot of emphasis on that. He says, you're gonna see when you get to the station, you're gonna see what everybody's doing. Pay attention to that, but find the written word in the rule book and make sure you stay within those parameters because you will be challenged on it. And trust me, as I've made it through these 33 years, I have been continually challenged. But I stand before you with a clean record because of that bit of advice from my father.
One of the role models was Captain Jc Tranier. When he was 16, he could paint trucks that my cousin had built at the old fire station. And I can remember one particular evening, he's getting ready to paint this, I think it was a Hayes Davis truck. And he told me, so you better get out of here. I'm finna paint, and the old spray gonna get on you. I said, oh, I'm all right, go ahead on. And he sprayed that truck. And when I got home, I got a good whooping. Because that old spray, I was solid red from that old spray. But that was Captain Jc. He's one of the captains, and he helped me a great deal. And all you had to do is listen to your captain.
I would say without a doubt, probably my two most impactful relationships would be with my brother and Captain Otis. My brother continually encouraged me. He never set a time path. You know, you've got to do this job for X number of years before you can look for the next job. But he always encouraged me to, you know, try to get additional education and take advantage of the opportunities I was presented with. And Captain Otis pretty much did the same thing from day one. Sometimes he was always looking over your shoulder, making sure you were doing the right things. And if you didn't, even though he was not my captain, he never hesitated to correct me and really show me the right way, and then continue to follow up and encourage me.
Captain Fisher inspired me when I was on 3 months, and we had ups truck stop on the causeway. We had a gasoline truck catch on fire over there, and the fire was coming out from under this long truck, and it's a windward side and a leeward side. And it looked like they would always put number 1 on the leeward side of the fire, which is the worst side. And Captain Fisher, I had the nozzle, and I went in and I was putting water, and Chief Shaw would come around and say, if you hear a hissing sound, he said, turn the nozzle off and run. Now, I've been on 3 months, and I'm looking at this fire that's coming out of that like a torch. And we were there, and what happened is the fire built up. I mean, the fuel built up around the truck that wasn't burning. And all of a sudden, it ignited, and there was an explosion. And he said, I remember she said, turn the nozzle off and run. All I could go was halfway. And I turned this 2.5 loose, and I turned, and Captain Fisher was in front of me. He said, oh shit. And he fell. And I'm saying, what am I supposed to do? Stop thinking about it. I said, no. I said, I know I'm going to die. I said, I'm just going to try to run. And the fire was behind me. Now, the chief of the fire department was running too. He was going over towards the old cafe, and I was following him. I left the nozzle was running. I said to myself, Captain Fisher's dead. When I got over at the old cafe, I looked back, he was standing there. He had on one of those rubber coats. Yeah, and it melted. Yeah. And it messed his shoulder up. He had to go to the hospital. And I was actually acting captain. And I only had 3 months. And I was glad to see him go. You know, I was glad about the chief
You the one ran out of the land.
Yeah, I ran out of the land.
You ran across the highway.
This is what makes it so bad. We had to go back to that nozzle that was going like that, and you lay on it till you get it stopped, and get back up under that. He's still on the lead side. And the way they put that fire out, they concentrated water on one person, and he went. I mean, it lasted hours. And he went in there and turned the nozzle off, and the fire went out.
Well, I'll tell y'all a story, and I can say because of all of you here, not long after I got promoted, I had an all-black crew. It was 4 on the pumper, 2 on the rescue truck. We was at Station 14, and we pulled up at this house. Guy's grandmother was in there. She wasn't doing good, and him and his buddies was over under the knowledge tree. They had them a couple cold ones, and they saw us, and their chest poked out. he got all his buddies, and they was like, come move this stuff out the way, let's help him out. And he was like, all y'all work for the Mobile Fire Department? I was like, yeah, we do. And just the pride in their face. Everybody pokes their chest out. So at that particular time, that was a few years that I had that crew. I can say I thought that I had one of the best crews on the department. But with that being said, all of that was made possible because of you guys.
To the level that those guys had. It's interesting, and it's one of the comments I make from time to time in the station. If you go to a funeral of a retired firefighter, generally you'll walk in, you'll see 20, 25, 30 of his old co-workers, and they're all around in a circle talking. And one of the comments I always make is, I wonder if we'll do that. I wonder if it'll be important enough for us to come out and pay our last respects to each other. And that question's yet to be answered, which is a good thing, I guess.
I really had a good relationship with Chief Steve Dean. You know, we used to go have breakfast in the morning before we go to work. You know, so I had a good relationship with him. Him and Tom Anderson are probably the two whites that I had the best relationship with.
It is a brotherhood, and it's a thing whereby guys, you feel like family, and you take up for each other. I was pretty lucky. All the crews that I was on, everybody was team players. Everybody looked out for each other, except I had this one situation where it didn't necessarily go like that all of the time, but most of the time it was like family. That's the same was with Bush and I, the crew we was on. We were a close-knit group. We used to work on cars. We'd work on cars, boats. Anybody had a project going, everybody would pitch right in and help them. And like the first crew I was on, before I got on the crew, everybody got together and helped each other build a house. You know, they built 3 or 4 houses, I think, and just a relationship like that with everybody.
Most of the older guys that were at Creole 1, you know, I grew up in that station. We would come around all the time. But one thing I'd like to highlight about the relationship that they had, if somebody needed a house and they could get the material, everybody would throw what they were doing aside and they'd go build that house. If you had mechanical trouble, there was always somebody there that could repair your car if you could get the parts. And I mean, it was a great, great relationship. It was more of a family than a relationship. And I mean, they've been over backwards for each other. And if you were down, we were all down.
I think one of the points too you was talking about, and I think that goes across this entire table, and I can even take it back to my father. And we talked about all the difficulties some of these guys have gone through the years, and the segregation and everything. And you know, the common thing when you talk with each and every one of them is, regardless of all of that, the incredible love that they have for this organization. It's still the same. That's something to be reminded.
Well, before I came on the fire department, I was working at the Battle House, and I felt very fortunate that I was hired on the fire department. And when I got there, I met some good guys. It was Jc Tranier and his brother, and Henry Heffler, and they had skills. They knew how to do just about everything as far as building a house. And I didn't have a home. I was living in the project. So they told me, said, Bush, if you can get the money to buy the material, we'll build you a house, provided you help us with ours. So by not having skills, I was the gopher. I go for the bricks. I go mix the mortar. And they built my house. During that time, it was like $4,000. And I had a complete house. And I thought that was real good. Now, on the other hand, I spent a lot of time building their house. Heffer had a home, so we built him a club over in Daphne. But I felt real close to each one. And it was just a bond. Michael Chester came on later, and we found a bond, you know, even to the day. I cannot talk to him for 6 months and pick up the phone, and it's like I talked to him yesterday. So that's the kind of experience I had being a fireman at Creole Number 1.
Creole Number 1, you have to understand, was a very close-knit family. Whatever shift you was on, it was when you got off, basically those gentlemen spent most of their off time almost together. If you needed work done in your house, either one or all of them was at your house helping you repair your house or paint or whatever the case may be.
When we were working, and we were trying to help each other. You know, we tried to make sure everybody could try to move up the promotion list, you know. At least I know I did, you know. But it wasn't just, I wasn't trying to just get Creoles promoted, I was trying to get black minorities promoted. That was always been my thing, you know. Let's get them promoted up, you know, because there was a lot more blacks that needed a job than was Creoles, you know, so. That was always been my thing, still is today, you know. If I can talk to them and try to get them, you know, I see a lot of the young guys say, why don't you take the test for the fire department? It's a great job, it's a great opportunity.
I was on the crew, the first crew. I was out at 22. And there was a guy building a house. And we all went out there and helped him 2 or 3 days on his house, on stuff that he had to do. Other stuff he had contractors doing, but the things that he had to do, we went out and helped him with that.
It was special. You had to be back then because they were visitors of the home. I remember Mark Tranier used to come out of our house, Jerome Tranier, Mr. Govan, his wife and kids. You know, when it came there, all the kids came with them. You know, and we would sit around and talk, just. You know, I mean, for hours and hours. Sometimes they play cards, but it was such a family-orientated type atmosphere, and everybody was so close. Everybody knew everything about each other. Really, it just wasn't nothing that one family didn't know about the other, and things are a little bit different these days. You know, now I often say, if history shall repeat itself, that's probably one thing they need to repeat.
All I can remember association, Creole Association, that was over on St. Francis in Dearborn at the old fire station. My mother was bringing us back from Mardi Gras Day, and she took all of us inside the old fire station, and he was having like a lawn festival in there. They had food, drink, and stuff like that. And now who organized all that, I can't remember now. But they used to do that on Mardi Gras Day.
That parade that existed in the late 1800s and 1900s, according to my father, was just specifically for Creoles. It was just within that certain proximity of the fire station. They had their own balls. The balls actually was upstairs at the fire station. They had their own schools within their communities for the Creole kids. My time with the fire department was when the age of 12 up to maybe 16. I would leave school from Harlem area down up Davis Avenue, and I would walk to Spring Hill and Ann Street where my daddy was working, and I would spend my evenings there until the last bus would run to crack to get home. And what I would do is I just enjoy being around the guys talking, and then they will allow me to interact with some of their activities, or laying the hoses outside the drive, or they will let me listen to the tape when the boxes come in, or firebox come in, and they would teach me certain things, like if the box would hit 2 times, that means that box was 2, and it was 5, and then that means box 2-5, and then if it hit 3, then you have box 253, and then they had an index card you pull out, and that would tell you what fire truck would respond to that fire and what street was on. And so I got very familiar with that, and I enjoyed doing that for them.
I had some good days in the fire department. And one of the first fires I went on, we got to the scene, and this fireman told me, "I'm sure glad number 1 got here. The fires just seem like to go out when you all get here." When the old Creole number 1 firemen get there, look like the fires will go out. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what he told me.
The generation go back then, before then, when they had the steam engines that the horses used to pull. My grandfather used to train those horses to pull those fire engines. And my mother used to tell me they'd run the team so long and then they'd rest them. And he stabled them and kept them up. And she said when she was a little girl, she'd be out in the yard, and them horses would hit them fire engines, and they'd just go crazy up and down the pasture. They wanted to get out, you know. But I remember her telling me that when I was a little boy. And they knew it was a fire somewhere, and they were ready to go.
They were running, get right at the tongue of the steamer and back up in place.
Yeah, they were trained. They had them on like a harness, and they'd back up in there and they dropped them harness on them, hook them up, and out the door they were gone. Yeah.
It's the same location, Dearborn and St. Francis. That's when they had their first fire truck, and the gentleman standing there holding their horse there. And if I'm correct, I think Raymond said that's Jack, old racehorse. No, Raymond's Hindenburg's uncle lived down on Chickapin Street. He had an area down there that he maintained the horses and kept them ready for the fire station. They would keep the horses at the station. Yeah, they would have whatever horse they utilized for that. Yeah, they would keep the horses there. Yeah. But if they need another horse for another shift, or however they decided back then to rotate, then but Raymond uncle was the one that maintained the horses and trained them and all of that. I said, I remember my father telling me, and Raymond would tell me that when they would respond to a fire, you know, they had a bell on the front of the horses, and it would ring all the time. And if you came in that neighborhood, that horse would just run up and down that pasture because he thought he was part of that, answering the call and everything. So yes, that's how they trained them horses.
Explain it to me. Before the Creole was an organization, and when they came into the city of Mobile, they had an agreement with them that only the members of that organization would be hired for that particular company. And that was an agreement they had. And so that was one of the reasons that they had Creole One.
You had to be a Creole descent.
Yeah. And I think it was in 1960. When did they integrate?
Yeah, 72. 72.
72. That was the end of the organization. Yeah. Right there.
At the station, they didn't have any study material. They didn't have anything. The red books, as they called them back then, I don't know what they call it now. Books didn't have no backs to them. And I recall asking one guy to help me. And I can't use the language that he used, but he was one of them that was passed up without taking a test. That's what he did on a lot of the Creole farmers.
I took the chief's exam one time, and we were instructed, in the old city hall, we were instructed not to leave the building, and the guy left the building, went back to Matt Sloan when Matt Sloan was behind City Hall there. And I don't know what he went back there for, but when he came back, Mr. Pierce wasn't going to let him in because they had told us we could not leave the building. So he went back, and they talked a while, and then Chief Sealhouse came up, another chief from Central, and Chief Tranier that was at Matt Sloan at the time. They all came back over there. And they let the guy back in. So I stood up, told my chest up, put it on Mr. Pierce's desk. I said, y'all are amazing. Y'all are who you want to be. But it's no sense in me taking it. I took the test one time, never took it again.
Well, the drive that got me going was I figured out they didn't want me. That was number one. And anytime you go and sit in an interview and you got the chief of the department, doesn't ask you any questions. He said, your dad's got a store. He said, you need to go on back over there and work in your dad's store. That was my interview. And it made me more determined to get the job. And I would fight and fight and fight. Finally, I got it. But I was last one hired under the rule of 30. And the rule of 30, I'll explain it to you. When they integrated the fire department, there were 30 firemen of color. So the only way you got a job if one of those 30 retired, then somebody would get the job. And I was the last one to get a job on the rule of 30. Henry Heffler retired. And when he retired, I got the job.
There were ups and downs. You know, I think through my career, minority firefighters went through a period of being such a small number that you had no impact until you reached a point where the numbers started to grow, and then in essence you started to change the environment in a given station. And in some cases there was resistance to that. And so the relationships over the period of years, there were high points and there were low points. And some of the minority progress by some people in the department was viewed as something negative to maybe some of the white firefighters, such as maybe the establishment of Progressive Black Firefighters, which was an affiliate of IABPFF. And to some white firefighters, they took that as a kick in the face. And in essence, it wasn't, you know, but that's how some reacted.
I was the first one to get past the rank of captain, and when I became assistant fire marshal. And the next year, Alex, Mark Hansberry, and myself, we were all promoted. Mark and Alex were promoted to district chiefs, and I was promoted to fire marshal. And that was knocking the door down because no one had, no black had ever been fire marshal.
No, I have to take that back. Early 60s, they had this policy, the second company in, lay a pump stream. Whether it needed or not, which to me, I thought was stupid. So I had this grocery store out there on Green Avenue in Plateau, and when we came out of 21, you could look over and see it. It was fully blue. Well, for some reason, I had a full crew. So I put 2 pre-connects of the pump stream on it and knocked it down. So I called number 8, told number 8, I say, Captain Brown, don't let nothing just come on in. He came on in, and the certain chief came on the scene, whooping and hollering and raising his hand. Why did you stop number 8 from laying the stream? I said, why lay a stream unnecessary? And as soon as I got the word unnecessary out of my mouth, they firebombed one down the street. Number 8 didn't have nothing off. He ran down there and used his booster and put it out. So he come back, you want to apologize. I said, no. You down me in front of my men, I'll see you at the chief's office in the morning. Chief Melton knew exactly what went on at 21, even before those folks. So when I got down there the next morning, he said, "Dublin, what you doing?" I said, "Waiting on you." I said, "This chief gonna bring me up on charges." He said, "I know all about it. Don't you have a second job?" I said, "Yeah." He said, Go to your second job." That just show you the thing we were confronted with the fire department. You couldn't use your head.
Let me tell you about that rule of 30. When I came on in 1960, I'll get back to what you said. When I came on in 1960, it was 4 men to the shift. And I remember going to a second alarm fire. I was driving. The man under me had 3 months. I had 9 months. And I'm driving and acting captain, going to a second alarm fire. That was the kind of pressure that you was under. No training. Like you say, all the training you got was at Washington Square, and they would tell you, I'd show you how to catch a plug. And I used to read the underwriter books to get information, but we were under tremendous strain when the captain is off or the driver is off. I remember going to a second alarm fire, like I was telling you, on Governor Street. I'm driving. No experience. The guy sitting next to me had about 2 months. And you know, when you talk on the mic, you had to press the button. So he pressed the button. He said, "Bush." He said, "What am I supposed to say?" I said, "The first thing you need to do is turn that button." So they could hear it all over the platform. Right.
Yeah, they would have training down at Central Fire Station.
Right.
Yeah.
Regular
training.
And you weren't allowed to go.
No, we wasn't.
It
Yes,
was
sir.
2
I
different
got mine in
departments.
Washington Square on Paramount Street.
I had 2 weeks training before they put me on the
Every
truck.
time
The week before getting on the
I was the first one to train with a white group of guys. There was 5 of them and me.
And whoever, I guess it would have been Henry Heffer, coming from 21. He was on vacation or sick or whatever, and they needed a driver. And I've been on 6 months. Can you drive a truck? Yeah. I've been driving one since I was 11. Can you prime this? Can you pump this truck? I don't know, he showed me what to do. He showed me what to do.
You weren't the guy on the radio, were you?
No. And I told him, I said, I worked with white guys in the military. I worked with them on merchant ships. And we ain't talking about a race now. And I asked him, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Because I told him, I said, once I get to the station, I could burn the midnight oil just like they burn midnight oil. All I want to do is get my feet on the ground, and I could burn the midnight oil. And like I told y'all earlier, I didn't have a problem. They helped me a lot.
Some of them was prejudice. You know, some of them slept on the floor before I got there because they didn't want to sleep in the same bed that I slept in. So when I got there, I picked my bed and they picked another bed. That was some of the things. I had an incident with one fireman at 14, and we were looking at a movie, and it was an incident where a black guy went in a white bar, and he just was real aggressive. And one of the guys on my shift got up and said, "Can't no blank go in a place like that and come out." And so I said, "Why do you use that wood?" And he said, "I'll let you figure it out." And
I said, well, okay, I see you read the Bible all the time, so I assume you use that word, you complimenting them. And so it'd be safe for me to call your mama one of them words. And he got mad, and the captain told him to sit down, because he brought it on himself. From that point on, I had no trouble with him. But that was the only incident I had in integrating the fire department. I was real comfortable.
When I came on, number one ran with more companies and covered more territory than any fire department in the city of Mobile. Number one used to run from Spring Hill and Nan. We run downtown with 6, 3, 2, and 5 and 2. Then we run all the way down the Bay on Pacific Street with number 7. We run down Broad Street with number 11 and run over with number 9. We run with 14 all the way out to Trinity Garden. We run all the way out to Crichton with 50.
Right.
I mean, we cover the city.
Things improved somewhat. I mean, it's still difficult, I imagine now, but when I was coming along, it was difficult to work on the department. If they decided that you had the ability to move up, you were attacked by everybody. You know, and, they would go get him to get after me, and when he got me, they'd get him. But it was very difficult. Some of the things, promotions, I was the first one to get a promotion without question. I was the first one to get above the rank of captain when I went in as assistant fire marshal. And right after that, the next year, myself, Mark Hansberry, and my brother moved up. They moved up to district chief, and I moved up to fire marshal.
They put the third shift on, and I remember when they was getting ready to integrate the fire department. They knew it was going to happen, but Chief Melton, they tried to fight it as long as they could. But what they did, I'll never forget this. They have Govan, have me, Govan, Alpha Watson, and they came out to the state and said, you know, we thinking about integrating the fire department. And I said, well, that's good. He said, or we thinking about maybe putting another station on. I said, well, I tell you what, just put 2 stations on. Two black stations on. He said, 2? They got in their truck and left. They left, they went. Well, when they did integrate it, he brought everybody up to everybody out. He didn't bring up as a group like we sit here. He shipped one firefighter at a time. I'll never forget this as long as I live. He said, what you think about integrating the fire department? I said, I think it's a good thing. He said, well, now you know you're going to have to compete against these white boys. I said, Chief, let me tell you something. I don't mind competing against them white boys. I said, if I can't make it on my own, that's on me. I said, if you don't ever give me the opportunity to compete, that's on you.
Yeah, you missing something there, Raymond. Before they took us to be interrogated, in a sense, we had a group, and he told us, we don't want you to be thin-skinned with the white boys. Right. You remember that? It was all those together. And then after that meeting, that's when they got us individually. And said some of the stuff you said, I remember saying, they said it to me.
When they integrated the fire department, they had 36 fire, Creole and black. That's what they had between the 2 stations. Okay? In 95, they still had 36. 95, that's when Mark and I got together and got with the International Association of Black Professional Firefighters.
And we had 17.
Yeah.
17.
They got down to 17. They wasn't high
17 firefighters of color, or the
Yeah.
17
Yeah,
Creole?
17 of color.
11 or 12 when I hired on in '87.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, Mark and I went up there.
Mark being
Mark Tranier. Mark and I went up there. And we liked what we seen. I was so shocked that when I walked in that door and I seen how many black fire chiefs, I don't mean assistant chiefs or deputy chiefs, I mean fire chiefs over fire departments throughout the United States, over the southeastern region. And that got me right there. I went to all the black city council, Red Ridge, and who else was there? Sullivan. All of them, I said, look, man, I'm trying to send these people to school. And Red Richardson and Clinton Johnson, and they gave us some money for the first couple of years. And then we started building enough money that we could send them on our own. Everybody on Mobile Fire Department went to that class. Was now assistant chief or district chief.
every firefighter of color.
Every firefighter of color that we put with, that's the thing. And you keep trying to tell these guys to go. And I said, look, man, if you spend your own money, just what? Because you can't get them to go. You had to do a daily report every day. And at the end of the shift, the lowest man on the totem pole, he had to, I don't care if he was out of Westmobile, he had to take that report down to Central Box.
Put it in the box.
Yeah, put it in the box.
Just notice, you just head around the back. That's the perfect thing.
But you had, but I know, it wasn't Frederick, it was Bessie or one of them days. I know I had just been on, and the streets was flooded. The cavemen were there. Just got those blue Jacobs, the one that,
He cut the tops
Melton
off.
cut the tops off.
Yeah.
And
They had Hans and Central.
Yeah,
What is
we
this?
had to put them on doors.
Yeah, you need to hear that about them tops.
Yeah, and we had wade in waist deep water down Congress Street to go to Central Fire Station to take those reports. And they said, made Leon, I was a young man, they made Leon go with me, so I didn't get drowned.
Have you ever heard of windshield wipers on both sides?
So they took it.
The inside and the outside. And that's the way the trucks were. No top.
Yeah, he cut all the
They
top.
had tops cut off.
The only one he
They
didn't
really
cut
didn't need to be out the
is the
rain.
one that kept the tanker truck out there at 22.
That was integration. That was the most dramatic change.
Right.
Integrating the fire department was the most dramatic change. That opened everything up where at least you had a chance to have an opportunity for promotion. You might not get it, but you had a chance to take it. And before integration, we didn't have any slots. There was no slots to fill, so there was no reason to study.
You put in the box.
Yeah, you was in a box. Yeah. But that's the biggest change that I think.
Yeah.
And,
Would everyone else agree?
Yeah.
No other.
Integration. I mean, with us, it would be
Integration.
the technology.
Say again.
I said with us, with me and Andrew and probably Chief Tranier, I think it would be more so the technology.
Well, another thing they did, they put us on the personnel board interview list. Hindenburg and myself,
yeah.
we was on the interview board.
Yeah.
To interview all the applicants.
So applicants coming in, you actually on the board
Yeah.
for interview.
We did the interview, and I did that 5 or 6, 7 years.
So earlier we was talking about the SCBAs.
Yes.
They were saying about, what was it? What is it? We've never even heard of that. Right? Until today, you know. The radios. Everybody on the truck now has a radio. From the captain to the plugman.
We have a computer with GPS on
We don't even have to get on the radio to check and route no more. We hit a button.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is y'all can be replaced by a monkey.
You don't have to read or write, just punch your button.
For me, it was the introduction of the Incident Command System. In 1989, we made the move from literally just showing up on an incident scene and just sort of saying what you wanted to say or do what you wanted to do, to where the first arriving company officer had to actually coordinate the fire attack. And I was fortunate enough to be central at the time. I got to sit in on all those classes. And that just sort of changed the whole process, fire ground management system and everything, how we went about doing things. And a lot of people struggle with it. Some people even to this day struggle. But that was a major advancement in the fire department that I got to see again.
When the computers came in, a lot of captains, maybe about 35 captains retired, but they didn't want to deal with the computer. And Captain Bavain, Mike, trained a lot of us on the computer. And they had David Rose too. Yeah, he was another one.
A good job, and it's rewarding, but you have to be real comfortable, real careful, because you can lose your life at the blink of an eye. Regardless of how much training you got, you can run into an incident where it will cost your life. So you learn as much as you can in your books and just be careful.
When you do this job, a lot of times your life is not in your hands. Once that truck rolls out that door, you don't know whether you're coming back or not. And it was some dark times, some bad times, some dangerous times, but that's part of the job. And that's what we're trained to do. We're trained to react. A lot of times we do things, we didn't take time, should I do this or should I do that? No, you just all in there, go do it. And after it's all over with, somebody said, you know you did so and so and so and so. I said, I did. You say, yeah. You just react. You're trained to react. And everybody back everybody up.
Be careful. And when I say be careful, because you got the brotherhood, it's true enough, but you've got other people that's got other ties that might be stronger than the brotherhood. And so, like it used to be, everybody was your friend. Now that might not necessarily be so. And I say that because I was sitting up at the house one night, and I looked at this. There was this guy that used to be on my crew. I saw his name pop up somewhere, and so I looked at Facebook to see what he had going on. And in the process, I saw some more names, and I looked at them. And a lot of these guys, I was surprised at what their thoughts and feelings were this day and time. And so, like I say, that because he's on your crew don't necessarily mean he's your friend. You know, he's on your crew. So be careful of your surroundings.
Well, I would tell them to try to be well prepared in their career, to try to make sure that they take all the educational promises they could make, and make sure they move up the ladder promotion. It's still not a lot of blacks in promotional positions in the fire department. You know, I learned by when we started professional black firefighters of Mobile, and I started traveling to these conferences. And I didn't have any idea there was that many black fire chiefs in the United States. And, you know, I think they all should aspire to be that one day.
You know, if I simply applied myself, my career path appeared for every practical reason to be under my control. And that was probably the main reason. I had some relationships, in the department, which were positive. The guys were generally, good, overwhelmingly, the majority of guys, no problem.
Going down the street, you hear the people holler, "There come Creole number one." Yeah. There come Creole number one.
People in the neighborhood around in the spring out and they worship Creole. They had a fit when they was going over there. The neighborhood, they just couldn't stop it. But all the people from O'Shea Road, down the street around there, we ran all the time. They did not want them to move.
I had this other captain that he was a laid-back guy. They called him Cool Man. He went to a fire one night and had a house on fire, another house catching on fire, and the woods catching on fire. And he called the operator and told her what they had, and she said, "You want us to send you some help?" He said, "No, we can handle it." And another incident, had a fire on the wall, and we were up in there putting water in the fire, up in the attic, letting it run down the wall. And the man who owned the house went to raising hell about it. "Y'all putting all that water in my house, and y'all doing this, y'all doing that." He said, "Buddy, let me tell you something." He said, "This was your house until you called me. When I got here, it's my house, and when I get through with it, I give it back to you." I said, "Hey, that's pretty cool."
After they integrated the fire department, nobody knew exactly what was going to happen, where they were going. And the first white captain I had was Captain Joe Lyons. He was a great guy, a great captain. And if I ever had any problems or anything, I just go to him and tell him. And he corrected us, "No, we're not going to have that," And he was another one, I told him that I was a swing driver and I wanted to start swing driving. He pushed me right on through on that, So that was, some of them, that was good mentors when I first came on.
First thing, you have to have a clean history in life. You have a clean life. That's where your best firefighter is going to come from. And majority of the guys that I work with was great guys. I didn't have a problem with nobody. I don't know if it's because I was a big guy or what, but I didn't have a problem with anybody. So I enjoyed my 30 years on the fire department.
The chances, the opportunities are there that if you exert yourself, that you can get half promotion. That there's a lot of rewards in the job. And I had a captain tell me one day, I was driving, we were going down the street, and he said, "You see that man sitting in that car?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "He's a doctor, probably making $300,000-$400,000 a year. But he riding on his big red fire truck." And then another thing, like a lot of guys pay good money to go skiing, snow skiing, deep sea diving, and all that kind of stuff to get that little adrenaline. We get it every day, and they pay us for it. So
every time I hear a siren, I ask the Lord to help them. Always say, "Help them, Lord."
I think they should keep an open mind and look at a person not by their color, their religion, or their choice to be a male, female, or whatever. They should look at that person as what they bring to the table. And I don't believe in discriminating against anybody, line everybody up on the same line, give them an equal opportunity. And if we do that, we won't have any problems.